program at Georgetown University, working very closely with the scholars and the instructors and also all the curriculum materials.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alea McCoolum. I am a senior program officer at the National Security Education Program, or NSEP, and we are the Department of Defense sponsors of the EHLS program.
All right, so as we launch into our wonderful presentation today, I wanted to go ahead and give you a little overview of the Zoom features nowadays. Lots of us are probably very intimately familiar with Zoom. We've been in the pandemic for over a year now, but today we are using Zoom for webinar or Zoom webinar, as well as broadcasting live on Facebook Live. If you're tuning in through Zoom, you will see on the Zoom toolbox that there is a chat bubble, a raise hand bubble, and then as well as a question bubble. Be aware that we will be only sharing our cameras. We won't be sharing the cameras of our participants, our attendees today. So that we are all aware, in regards to questions as they come in, we aren't going to stop along the way. We're going to keep all of our questions until the end. So feel free to listen to the whole presentation and then write down your wonderful questions and then ask them at the end. And please ask them via the question box right down here. You see my arrow pointing to it, the Q&A box. That's where we're going to be getting most of our questions. I'll try to take a look at the chat box, but keep your questions in the Q&A box for us. And if you're tuning in through Facebook Live, you are able to comment your questions and we'll get to them after today's webinar. So, during the webinar, we will be talking about the English for Heritage Language Speakers program and what to expect during the academic program, and then after you finish the program and you start your service requirement. We have some really wonderful experts out there that's going to be able to answer a lot of your questions. So you're definitely at the right webinar. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual overview of the EHLS program and give you a little bit of background about it before we dive in deep. So the EHLS program is a professional English communication skills program. It also helps with your career skills. The program trains advanced speakers of English to be effective communicators and strong candidates for federal jobs. It is hosted at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Every scholar admitted to the program receives a full scholarship funded by the National Security Education Program, or where Alea works. The program is 8 months in length. The first 6 months are part-time. The first 6 months are full-time on Georgetown's campus, full-time in person on campus in Washington, D.C. The final 2 months are part-time conducted online. And so you are all aware it's a continuous process. You must do the first 6 months, then the two months part-time. So it's not like a give or take. It's a full continuing 8-month program, 6 months full-time, 2 months part-time. Participants are native speakers of critical languages who have a real commitment and interest in public service. EHLS scholars come from diverse cultural and educational backgrounds and very diverse professional backgrounds, but they are all united and interested in and committed to public service. And that's what unifies our EHLS scholars. So you might be asking why EHLS, and then also kind of what's the background of it. So EHLS was established because critical language skills are in critically high demand in the US government. There are other government-sponsored scholarship programs out there that teach critical languages to native English speakers, but this is a one-of-a-kind program that is designed to prepare individuals with native knowledge of critical languages for the federal workplace. A brief background on the organizations and history of EHLS. EHLS is a partnership among 4 organizations. The National Security Education Program provides the funding. The Center for Applied Linguistics oversees instruction and coordinates language testing. Georgetown University provides the instruction, and the Institute of International Education oversees the application process. We work in collaboration with each other very harmoniously. So we're always communicating with one another. EHLS started in 2006, and 2022 will be the 17th program year, which is amazing that we're this far along into the program. So some of the wonderful benefits in terms of the program. The EHLS Scholarship Program is awarded through the National Security Education Program, which is administered by the Defense Language National Security Education Office, or DELENCIO. Each scholar is provided full tuition and fees for the 8-month academic program, in addition to a living stipend. Our scholars receive $3,600 per month during the first 6 months and $1,200 per month during the last 2 months, which are the part-time. For scholars moving from outside the Washington, D.C. metro area, NSEP can reimburse relocation costs up to $1,000. Other wonderful benefits of the program is health insurance through Georgetown University, a laptop computer in which to complete your EHLS assignments, and that you get to keep after the program ends, as well as a certificate from Georgetown University upon successful completion of the academic program. And that in itself opens up so many doors for our scholars. Scholars must agree to the following terms outlined on the screen, but I'll also read them aloud. You must be willing to commit to a full-time attendance and successful completion of the academic program. You must agree not to work during the full-time portion of the academic program. And I am going to repeat that again. You agree not to work during the full-time program, during the full-time academic program. The program, and Dr. Mutula will talk more in depth about this. It's so in depth that our scholars cannot work. And then you also accept the service requirement after completing the academic program. And Alea is going to share in depth about that service requirement. So that this is a really wonderful webinar for you all to attend. So we've told you about this wonderful program, but we haven't told you who's eligible for this wonderful program. So the eligibility requirements are detailed on the screen, but I'll also read them aloud. You must be a US citizen at the time of application. You must be a native speaker of one of the 24 languages listed on the screen, and you must have professional level proficiency in that language. Those languages include Arabic, Azerbaijani, Balochi, Bambara, Dari, Farsi, Khas, Hindi, Kazakh, Korean, Kurdish, Kyrgyz, Mandarin Chinese, Pashto, Punjabi, Russian, Somali, Tajik, Tamashek, Thai, Turkish, Urdu, Uzbek, and Vietnamese. And you must have professional level proficiency in that language. You must also have advanced proficiency in English. Your proficiency in English and your native language will be formally tested during the application process. You must also have a college degree. That is at least a bachelor's degree, but we also get those who have master's, doctorates, multiple master's degrees. So we welcome all, as long as they have at least a bachelor's degree. And that degree has to be equivalent to a bachelor's degree in the United States. So if you have a degree from a foreign institution, you have to have that degree evaluated. And I can talk about that later down the road if we have any questions about that. As well, you must be able to use internet. You must have digital literacy skills. You'd be able to operate PowerPoint, word processing programs, jump on a Zoom meeting. You must also be able to commit to a full-time day program through January through June in Washington, D.C. at Georgetown University's downtown campus called the School of Continuing Studies. And you must be willing to commit to a full-time, you must be willing to commit to the service requirement, that 1-year service requirement after successfully graduating from the program. So at this time, I am going to pass it over to Dr. Mutula to share about the academic program.
Great. Thank you very much, Chelsea. It's very exciting for me to share with you more about the actual academic program and what to expect during your studies within the program. Slide, Chelsea. Thanks. So thinking big picture in terms of the goals of the academic program. These goals involve both improving your English language skills and also developing and honing your professional skills that you will need to successfully work within the federal workplace. In the program, we work on all 4 language skills, so reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And we also work on professional skills, such as resume writing, dressing for success, delivering a 1 to 2 minute elevator speech, and also interviewing skills as you start to focus on your job search. Next slide, Chelsea. Oops. Great, thank you. Here you can see the program schedule. The program will start in early January and runs all the way through the end of August. It's an 8-month program. But as Chelsea has mentioned, the program is broken into 2 components. The first 6 months, January through June, are very intensive. And during this time, you will be on campus in Washington, D.C., pretty much 40 hours a week. I mean, this really is a job. In July and August, we'll shift the program to the online portion of the program. This is more part-time, and all of your work will be done online, and you can participate in this online from anywhere in the US and sometimes around the world. Next slide, please. I wanted to share this with you as well because this gives you more information about the program schedule. You can see that every 2 months, there is a 1-week break between each of the 4 sessions. Each session is 2 months, and each session is very intensive. We strongly recommend that if you need to schedule appointments for doctors or dentists or other activities, including interviews, that you schedule them during session break. Please note that our program is so intensive that we do not have any excused absences. We take attendance for each class every day, and we follow Georgetown University's guidelines of allowing participants to have up to 15% absences. If you're absent more than that, you are subject to failing. So again, we suggest that you schedule doctor, dentist, and all other appointments during these session breaks. You can see the last activity in the program is graduation. And I would like to note that graduation is mandatory, and this is an in-person graduation. And so if you do leave the Washington, D.C. area during the summer, you are required to come back to Georgetown University to participate in the graduation activities in person. Next slide, please. So you have an idea of the schedule, but I thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit more about what are the expectations that we have for scholars during the program. We require active participation in all of the classes, the tutorials, and other activities as they are scheduled. This includes attendance Monday through Friday on campus at Georgetown School for Continuing Studies campus, which is located downtown near the Chinatown metro station. We also expect full participation in all of the activities, as well as the completion of assigned tasks. This includes both activities that you'll be doing in class during the day, but also the completion of all homework that is also assigned to you. So there will be work required in the evenings and weekends. I don't want anyone to think that, you know, at Friday at 5 o'clock, the whole weekend is free. No, instead there's additional work that will need to be completed outside of the class hours. Next slide, please. Great. I wanted to share a little bit more information about the courses themselves. You can see here, I've broken this up into the intensive program, the first 6 months, and then the part-time online program, which is the last 2 months. In general, the EHLS curriculum focuses on the communication skills that are necessary in many government jobs. In the reading and writing class, you will learn how to write reports and how to do research drawing on sound analytic conclusions, and how to do this within the context of the US federal government and their expectations for communication styles. In the professional oral communications course, you will be making presentations on a daily basis, and many times the instructor will be recording these presentations and giving you feedback and making comments for you to review as you watch your own taped presentation. By the end of the intensive program, scholars' presentation skills are very polished and very refined, and they're able to present their final presentations, their capstone projects, in a well-prepared way, because having done so much practice, everyone really does very well. In the news analysis course, you will be assigned articles, news articles, to read, and also taught how to do critical analysis of the news. Each scholar might, for example, read a report about a news piece from their area of the world and share this, a summary and an analysis, a federal briefing, with the entire class on any given day. In your career skills development course, you will become comfortable sending emails in English and will understand the proper format and protocol that is expected of you. You will learn negotiation skills, as well as how to run an effective meeting. By the time you are halfway through the program, you will have a beautifully perfected resume to submit to future employers. We also have opportunities for mock interviews and also have agency representatives join us to do practice interviews with scholars and then to provide feedback. We will even discuss how to dress and get ready for an interview. For each of these courses, you will see in parentheses that oftentimes it's not just the course, but also the tutorials that you will be participating in. We have 2 reading and writing instructors, for example, and there are 9 scholars per class. If you have instructor A for reading and writing, then you would have instructor B for your reading and writing tutorial. In the tutorial, you will get individualized and tailored hands-on feedback and help with your writing challenges through one-on-one meetings with your instructor each week. We have found through the years that many of our scholars, after the 6 months of the intensive program, greatly benefit from additional support in their writing skills and also their career development skills. And so several years ago, we added these 2 courses as online classes for the additional 2 months in the summer. So this is July and August. While you are in the 6-month intensive program, You cannot work. You, as Chelsea mentioned, it's so intensive, it's not possible to work. And you actually sign an agreement not to work, even having a part-time job. You may also not be enrolled in any other academic program during this time period. However, during the part-time online 2 months at the end of the program, you can work and get a job anywhere, since this is all online. Next slide, Chelsea. Thank you. This is just a sample daily schedule of what a day might look like. You can see that pretty much from 9 to 5:30, you are actively involved either with tutorials or in class, or sometimes with additional scheduled activities. You can see this really is a very busy program, and it is basically the equivalent of a full-time job. Next slide. I wanted to also share with you this slide, which is a sample schedule for the week. You can see here on a weekly basis when the courses would be scheduled. So for example, you can see that from 10:10, you would be enrolled in the professional oral communications course, Monday through Thursday. After a short period for lunch, you would be in the reading and writing for professionals class. And then at the end of the day, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, you would be enrolled in the news analysis course. In the afternoon on Wednesday, you would participate in the career skills development course. And then also related to that, on Friday mornings, you will have an opportunity to interact with guest speakers during our Friday guest speaker series. These are individuals who will come to campus to give a presentation about their federal agency, to share ideas about their agency and work opportunities for the scholars. They also can share information about how to best apply for the agency, as well as providing additional information. You can also see here that there are times first thing in the morning from 9 to 10, and then also in the mid-afternoon. These areas are shaded, but there's no course time assigned, course name assigned to them. These are the times during which you would have tutorials. In addition to the classes, you would each be enrolled and participating in 3 tutorials each week. There is a one-on-one tutorial with your professional oral communications team for 1 hour a week, and then 30-minute tutorials for your reading and writing instructor, and also 30 minutes with your career skills development instructor. You can see here, this is a very busy schedule. Next slide, please, Chelsea. Great. I wanted to take a few moments to also share a bit more information about the Open Source Analysis Project, or as we call it, the OSAP project. This is the capstone activity for the program, and this culminates at the end of June, at the end of the intensive program. This is your chance as an EHLS scholar to show off your knowledge and your skills. You will be working with a federal agency mentor on a topic that is provided by them specifically for you. Perhaps your mentor is an expert in your area of the world, but does not have the native language capacity and the cultural knowledge that you as a native speaker have. You would be providing that knowledge as you do research on the area, and you are an asset to them. You will get to do research on the topic in your native language and in other languages that you know. So for example, past scholars from the Maghreb area have done their research in Arabic, French, and even Tamashek. Many scholars get job offers as the result of their OSAP research and then their OSAP formal symposium presentation. It is important to note that we do pay attention to your native language and cultural backgrounds, and the expectation is that you will be using those to support your OSAP research. Many scholars bring copies of their written final report to the formal symposium presentations to be able to give out to interested members of the audience. And after the symposium presentations, scholars often are invited to give their presentations again on site at different agencies. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. The last area I wanted to touch upon was some additional expectations that we have during the program. It's really important for scholars in the program to have clear goals, both language development goals and professional development goals. Also related to this is to really have a strong motivation for being in the program, for obtaining a job in the federal government in an area of national security, and also be open to independent learning, receiving feedback from your instructors and from peers, incorporating that feedback in your work. And of course, through it all, working in a very collaborative environment where scholars work a great deal together on teamwork and group work and working with the instructor to help create a very positive learning experience and learning environment. So with that, I would like to now turn the floor over to Ms. Alea McCollum, who will share more information with you about the service requirement of the program.
Great, thank you, Dr. Matula. Good afternoon again, everyone. So we're now going to transition to talking a little bit more about the NSEP federal service requirement, which is just a really unique component of the EHLS program. And again, my name is Alea McCollum from NSEP. We are the DoD sponsors of EHLS. And if selected for the award, NSEP will be working with you once you actually complete the academic part of the program, helping you to navigate this federal job search. Next slide, please. So in terms of public service, what makes a competitive EHLS applicant? Scholars are required to complete a minimum 12-month federal service requirement, but preference is given to those who express a longer-term commitment to public service, particularly those who want to, build a long-term career in government. So within the application, you're given the opportunity to describe further how you plan to fulfill that federal service requirement. And in your essay, we recommend that you be very specific about which positions you would pursue, what departments and agencies you're interested in. So instead of, just providing a very vague overview, for example, saying that you're interested in the Foreign Service, tell us a little bit more about that. Research exactly how this EHLS experience would build your skills for these specific positions and why you'd be a good fit for government service. Slide, please. So as I mentioned, in exchange for EHLS funding, scholars incur a 12-month federal service requirement. So you're required to at least begin your federal service within 3 years of program completion. Once you actually begin that federal service, you're then given an additional 5 years to complete it in full. We also offer what we call academic deferrals to those who wish to pursue higher education. So if after completing the EHLS program, you want to go back to school, get a master's, a PhD, we'll actually stop the clock on your service deadline so that that time in school doesn't count against you. We also just, strive to be really flexible by offering all scholars 2 12-month extensions of the service requirement, just in the event that you need a little bit more time to secure your federal job. So as you can see, you have quite a generous time frame to complete the service requirement. Slide, please. So where can you fulfill the NSEP requirement? So we have 3 very broad tiers of service, and they're listed here in descending order of preference. And I'll talk about these in greater detail over the next few slides. Slide, please. So I'll start with Tier 1, and this includes what we call our 4 priority areas. So these include the Department of Defense, including the Armed Forces, the Department of State and USAID, Homeland Security, and any member of the intelligence community. So as you probably know, there are 18 member organizations, of course, the CIA, NSA, FBI, but there are several other organizations as well within the IC broadly, and work in any of them would count toward your requirement. EHLS scholars are required to at least begin the job search within these departments. So any federal position, whether it's civilian, military, foreign service, within these 4 priority areas will automatically count toward your requirement. They don't necessarily need to be language-enabled positions. We have scholars working in really diverse fields, including cyber, finance, HR, in addition to kind of more traditional foreign affairs type of work. So we just encourage you to think really broadly about where you may be able to apply your own particular skill set and capabilities. Slide, please. So here are just a few examples of where EHLS scholars have previously worked. As you can see from the slide, they've worked in really diverse positions ranging from language instructor to doing counterterrorism analysis to serving in more programmatic and managerial type roles. So again, it's great if you're able to use your heritage language at your federal job, but it's not necessarily required. Slide, please. So moving on to what we call Tier 2. So if you're unable to find a suitable federal position within Tier 1, again, those 4 priority areas that we just talked about, you can then expand your job search to include positions in Tier 2. So these are positions in the broader federal government with national security responsibilities. We have a very broad understanding at NSEP of national security. So this could include, issues of population and migration, public health, diplomacy, economic competitiveness. We basically leave it to you as the scholar to tell us why your work is national security related. So it's on the EHLS scholar to make that argument. We've had scholars in the past work in agencies throughout the federal government, including departments of energy, commerce, justice, US Census Bureau, among many others. And then next slide, please. So there are many different ways in which you can fulfill the service requirement. The majority of our scholars do secure full-time permanent employment. That's the ideal. However, some awardees, they do pursue internship programs or other short-term work, which is also a great way to get a feel for different agencies. The US government does offer internships and other opportunities for students and recent graduates through the Federal Pathways Program. And these opportunities can all be accessed on the USA Jobs site. I'll mention that federal contracting work might also count toward the requirement. We award service for contract work based on the tier structure that we talked about. So for example, contracting with the Department of Defense would count under Tier 1, contracting perhaps with the Department of Justice or one of those other agencies would count for Tier 2. And then finally, after exhausting all of the federal options, you can also petition our office to fulfill your requirement in the field of US education. So perhaps working as a professor, a language tutor, or even a research assistant. And of course, our preference at NSEP is that you do federal work. So this education option is really more of a last resort after you've made a full and good faith effort to find government employment. Slide, please. So as I mentioned, federal contracting work does count towards the service requirement in many cases. And these are just a few examples of contracting organizations that EHLS scholars have worked at. You can see a couple of these big name companies like Booz Allen, Deloitte, and others as well. And our scholars have worked with these organizations in many different capacities, including as social media analysts, language instructors, open source analysts. And so this list here, it's not comprehensive. This is just a very brief list to give you an idea of some of the contracting organizations that are out there. Slide, please. So before we discuss how EHLS and NSEP can help you to secure federal employment, we do want to highlight your role in the job search. So we do expect scholars to remain proactive and engaged. This means that you are researching organizations of interest, you're networking, attending career fairs, and of course you are diligently applying to federal positions. The job search is primarily self-directed. So NSEP cannot find a position for you individually, nor can we guarantee you a job within the federal government, right? Now, however, having said that, we still do everything that we can to assist you during the federal job search. Slide, please. So let's start with some of the assistance you receive during the EHLS program. So first of all, during the academic portion of the program, you do receive specialized career skills training, which covers a number of things, including using online tools to search for jobs, researching agencies of interest, learning how to evaluate different positions, figuring out what works for you, preparing your application materials, because federal resumes and cover letters look very different than those used in the private sector. And then finally, we also help you to perfect your interview skills. Slide, please. During the program, you'll also have the opportunity to learn more about the different agencies out there and all of these possible career paths. So we offer what we call our Friday Speaker Series, which features guest speakers from various federal agencies. And you'll also participate in seminars throughout the program with government and contracting recruiters. So just another great resource for you to kind of brainstorm possible career paths after the program. Slide, please. And then once the academic program is completed, so once you finish your studies at Georgetown, NSEP then offers you more tailored job search guidance. We do resume and cover letter review. We'll meet with you one-on-one to do career consultations. We have a number of our services listed on the slide here. I'd also like to highlight one of the major benefits of the program, which are the NSEP exclusive job opportunities. So we partner with federal agencies throughout government to offer exclusive jobs and hiring events. So these are opportunities that are only offered to EHLS scholars and other NSEP alumni. So currently we have about 15 to 20 exclusive jobs currently open. These include a sanctions analyst position with the Department of Treasury, a trade specialist with the Department of Commerce, a linguist job with the FBI, and an intelligence officer position with Homeland Security. So these are just a few of the jobs we currently have open. And again, those are available only to EHLS and NSEP alumni. Slide, please. So NSEP is able to offer these exclusive job opportunities because of the NSEP special hiring authorities. So after completing the program, EHLS scholars have what we call non-competitive hiring eligibility, or NCE status. And this means that government agencies can directly appoint EHLS scholars to federal jobs without having to advertise it on USA Jobs or on other platforms. So for you as an applicant, this means that you don't have to compete against the general public for many federal positions. So you have a much better chance of being hired and getting your foot in the door, which is just a huge advantage that you would have as an EHLS scholar. I'll also mention, kind of flesh out the differences between these hiring authorities. You have two distinct special hiring authorities available to you as an EHLS scholar, and these are Schedule AR and NDAA 13, or the National Defense Authorization Act of fiscal year 13, two separate distinct authorities. Schedule A allows you to be hired non-competitively at any federal agency for a term position up to 4 years. So this authority leads to a temporary position. However, NDAA 13 allows you to be hired non-competitively at designated national security agencies, including DoD, Homeland Security, State, and others. And after 2 years, you're converted to a permanent position, which means that you have a pathway to permanent federal employment. So again, these are two authorities available to you as EHLS scholars that are used for slightly different purposes. And of course, we help you throughout the entire federal hiring process, helping you to decipher this and explain these hiring authorities to the different federal agencies. Slide, please. So turning now to federal job locations, a lot of people think that to work for the government, you have to relocate to the Washington, D.C. area. However, the majority of federal jobs, I think over 80%, are actually outside of D.C. So many agencies have field offices nationwide, including Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of State, FBI. Those are just to name a few. So wherever you choose to live, either domestically or even overseas, you can find a federal job that works for you. Slide, please. So I'll just talk really quickly about security clearances as well. So first of all, I'll say that not all federal positions require a security clearance. However, if you are interested in the intelligence community, if you're interested in pursuing any type of sensitive national security work, you will likely require a clearance, potentially even a top secret clearance. And so what that process looks like is that to obtain a clearance, you need to provide information, very comprehensive information on your previous residences, your employment history, your travel history, your foreign contacts and family, everything like that. And something to be aware of as you're applying to federal jobs is just the length of time that it takes to receive a security clearance. So if you provide all of your information in a timely manner, hopefully, the process will go very quickly. However, you should just be aware that processing in some cases can take up to a year or even over a year, especially for those higher level clearances. So this is just another factor to consider and to include in your own job search timelines, that it does take a while to get a federal job. Slide, please. Then finally, here are just a few resources for you as you start thinking about your service plans and your future federal career. So we encourage you to check out a couple of these websites, start browsing positions that are available on these sites, and just think really creatively and broadly about how you can contribute to the federal government and utilize your skill sets. Slide, please. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Chelsea.
Thank you, Alea and Dr. Tula, for being with us today. Before we take questions, I want to go ahead and let you guys have some time to think about questions that you might have. So I'll share a little bit about where you can find EHLS. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we are on LinkedIn, and we update those social media platforms regularly. So go ahead and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Get the most up-to-date information. And for those of you who are currently tuning in with us from Facebook Live, well, go check out our website, which is in the subtitle of this webinar. From here, I'll share our upcoming virtual events. We have multiple virtual events coming up every Wednesday. We have a live Q&A session from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is when myself, my colleague Maria, and my colleague Rosalie get on a Zoom meeting and kind of hang out with our applicants and answer your questions. It's a very informal situation. And we do that every single Wednesday now through the end of June. And for those situations, we also invite special guests. So every live Q&A session, we have a special guest that joins us, and we usually advertise who that might be the day before via our social media platforms. So make sure to check out our social media platforms. We also have applying to EHLS webinar, which will be May 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That will tell you all about the application process. My colleague Rosalie will share some really great tips about Slate, the application site. As well, I provide some information about skills testing in the ILR scale, which is the language testing scale we use, that the federal government uses. So join us for another virtual event. We love to talk to our applicants and we love to answer your questions. At this time, we'll move over to the questions. We have a little under 10 minutes to address any questions that you all might have in the question box. If we don't get to all of them, you can reach out to myself, Chelsea Lafferty at the Center for Applied Linguistics, or my colleague Maria Mariani at Georgetown University, or our colleague Rosalie Wolf at IIE. So I'll leave their contact information up on the screen at this time as we open up the floor for some questions. So this first question that we have is in regards to the age requirement for the program. So I'll answer it first, but Dr. Motula and Alea, please do feel free to chime in at any point. This question is, what is the age requirement for the EHLS program? The EHLS program does not have an age requirement. However, what I would add is that we are really interested in folks who want to make a career of federal service, and also those who want to go back to working. So if by chance you have retired and you aren't interested in going back to work, the EHLS program might not be the best suited situation for you because you do incur a 1-year service requirement. Alea or Dr. Motula, any additions to that?
No, the only thing I might add is that at Georgetown, this is an adult education program, and that we do require participants in the program to at least be 18 years old.
Mm-hmm. And you have to have a bachelor's degree, so.
Yes.
All right. So it's looking like we don't have very many questions at this time. If you do have a question, feel free to put it in the question box. We'll wait about 1 to 2 more minutes to take in those questions. A question that I often get is around the service requirement. So I'm going to go ahead and, since we have the source of our information with us today, I'm going to ask Alea a common question that I get from applicants, which is, how long does a service requirement take? A security clearance take, sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question. We get it a lot. It's going to vary. It will depend a lot on, first, the type of clearance that you're seeking, because there are different levels depending on the type of information that you have access to in your job. So there's everything from a very simple background check, which could take, maybe 3 weeks to a month, to a top secret clearance, which you're going to need for, any positions within the intelligence community, if you're interested in working in CIA, NSA, so on. And so for a top secret clearance, that could last up to a year, potentially over a year. And that just depends on a number of factors, including, how many cases does the government have to deal with? How many cases are they processing? Is there a backlog that they're currently dealing with? And then it also depends sometimes on, your own personal background. Potentially, if you have traveled extensively overseas, they need to check that out. So it's going to take a little bit longer than someone, say, who has, never left their hometown, for example. So it just varies. But definitely think about that as you are planning how to fulfill your service requirement. Put that into your timeline.
And Dr. Motula, a question that we often get from EHLS scholars is, they often are like, oh, is the program really that rigorous? Can I really not work? So I would love for you to share a little bit more about how rigorous the program is, and maybe how much time homework is every evening and on the weekends.
Absolutely.
Ballpark.
Sure. Thank you, Chelsea, for that question. Yes, the program really is that intensive during the January through June session. And every year that comes perhaps as an unexpected reality or a surprise for our scholars. Not just the intensity of the program, but that we really do expect people to be there every day on time for the full day. And, you know, we tell people preparing for this program, it's very important to have a bit of a support system set up for you because, you know, you will have limited time during the intensive program to be, you know, spending time, you know, cooking, cleaning, you know, driving your children to different arrangements and all that. So it's important to have a support system that you can utilize. I think it's safe to say that in addition to the time on campus, classes, tutorials, etc., scholars should expect about 3 hours of homework each day in the evenings. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to get done. I will say, however, we are also very mindful of the intensity of the program, and we constantly work towards assigning activities on a weekly cycle so that you know what's going to happen. You know that every week on Wednesday morning, your audio journal is due, for example. And so you can look at your whole week and plan ahead so that you're not hopefully waiting until Tuesday night to do that, but instead can perhaps take advantage of some quiet time over the weekend. So I hope that provides a bit more information, Chelsea.
Yes, and just also to attest to how wonderful the program is, see Dr. Matula embeds even in the program itself great ways for time management, which is a very important career skill that you would need in the federal workplace environment. And then my final question is around the OSAP. Since we have Alea and Dr. Matula here, I would love to hear from both of you in regards to scholars and their OSAP research. Do they, you know, often the question we get is, do I get to choose whatever topic I'm interested in? Or does it have to be in regards to my area of the world? So I'd love for you all to share a little bit more in depth about how our scholars are an asset to the federal government in the abilities to do that research. So I'll Dr. Matula, if you want to share first, and then Alea can maybe talk a little bit about the federal portion.
Absolutely, that's a great question, and it comes up often. During the program, we reach out to our partners within federal agencies to invite them to participate in the OSAP project by, number one, sending us topics and research questions, and number two, by offering to be a mentor through the process. These topics are submitted to us. We cannot guarantee a certain number of topics that we get. It varies from year to year. It also varies in terms of which agencies submit topics for us. But as part of the invitation to agencies, we do share with them profiles of our current group of scholars. And, you know, in a very general sense, there's no, you know, personal information shared, but, you know, we have a scholar from this area who speaks this language and has an educational background in this field, and also a work background in this field. And so the agencies use that to create topics that are relevant and can be helped by the scholars. Sometimes scholars may have multiple topics to choose from. Sometimes there may only be 1 or 2 topics available. We really cannot control that. But I would like to say that scholars come into this program based on their expertise, both their language backgrounds and their cultural backgrounds. So yes, it is expected that scholars are going to be working on a topic that is related to their background, both their language, work experience, and culture. I hope that helps. Sorry for the long answer. And Alea, you may have additional input.
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. I'll just say that, the OSAP is really different from any other type of academic project you might have pursued in your bachelor's or your master's program, right? When you were writing your bachelor's thesis, for example, that was entirely directed by your own interests and what you personally wanted to study. With the EHLS OSAP project, this is a little bit different because it's driven by the needs of our federal partners. So these agencies come to us with specific gaps that they need to fill. And in that sense, you're sort of acting as a junior analyst for them. You're the subject matter expert. And so you're filling that critical gap by using your heritage language and your own regional cultural expertise to fill that gap. So to the best of our ability, we try to match you to something that you're interested in. It doesn't always work out that way. You may find yourself working on, some subject matter that you have no previous experience in, but at the very least, it will be related to your heritage language and to your heritage region.
All right, and so we are at time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time today. And I want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Matula and Alea McCollum for coming to our webinar today and sharing so much wonderful information with us all. And we will be posting this on YouTube as well, so you can come back and visit this webinar anytime you like. So thank you, Dr. Matula, and thank you, Alea, for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chelsea. And thank you, everyone who attended.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.